What is up? If you currently live in New York and you're struggling to make money, trust me when I say you are not alone. I myself moved here about a year ago, and when I initially got here, it was an absolute nightmare trying to make money. Everything's more expensive, everything's more competitive. I'm a music producer by trade, I even have degrees, and I couldn't get a job here to save my life. After months of trying, I finally just kind of resorted to working back in the service industry, serving at restaurants and whatnot. And even that wasn't really working out too well. It's a really rough market out here. But I actually stumbled on something completely by accident. And ever since I started doing it, I've actually been able to make at least 4 or 5 grand every month doing it. And it does require some hustle, but you can absolutely do it. It is 100% achievable. So I'm going to talk about how I kind of fell into doing this. Basically, like I said, I'm a music producer. I make electronic music. I produce beats. That's a very hard market to support yourself in. So about 2 years ago, I started doing YouTube videos. So exactly what I'm doing now, but on a different channel for music production and learning how to use the software and everything like that. And in doing so, I had to learn how to film myself and work with a camera and lighting and whatnot. For a long time, I literally just used my iPhone. And so when I was kind of in the midst of, struggling to get a job, I thought about what skills I had besides producing music and besides for serving in the restaurant industry. And there's a huge market for good quality content, huge. So everything's on social media these days, everything's online these days, everything's on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all that. So there is a huge demand for pro quality video with good audio. And the first way I discovered that is I actually started working with the music production college out here. And basically I had a buddy who worked there and he said, "You do content, right? Could you come in and do some content for us?" And that actually resulted in me getting a residency there as their videographer. And once I kind of started doing this, I kind of started to notice that everybody needs a videographer for everything. If that's business owners, schools, restaurants, all that kind of stuff. So then I kind of said to myself, hey, this is something that's kind of cool that I can do in my own time. So I can kind of do it whenever I want and make a couple bucks. And the cool part is that it actually doesn't require any money or expensive cameras up front, despite what a lot of people think. So right now I'm shooting on the Sony ZV-E10, which I'll link in the description. This is literally the camera you get if you're looking for an entry-level camera. If I didn't use this camera, I would literally just use my iPhone 14 Pro. This is the only camera that's worth getting that's close in range to where you're getting to pro video. But with that being said, for a long time, I literally just used my iPhone. And the thing about videography is that it's all about lights. So with an iPhone, the phone in your pocket, and some decent lights, you can actually get some impressive content. So with that preamble out of the way, I'm going to talk about the market we're targeting here and what we're actually going to do to start profiting and making some money. So yeah, there's a lot of people who need content, but again, it's one of those things where it's really competitive. But I found a niche that works super well that seems relatively untapped. And it's one that I'm going to share with you guys today where now it's actually where I drive almost all of my sales from and all of my money in videography. So while filming at the school, I was still working at a restaurant. And one day they said, "Hey, you film at the school, right? Could you take some pictures of our food for us and some videos?" I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I went in there and I just used some of my lights. I had my camera at this point, using my camera, and I shot some pictures and some videos of the food for them. And they paid me like $500. I was absolutely blown away. They just handed me $500 and they're like, "Yeah, this is pretty much standard for what we pay people who come in and get our pictures for us." So right there, that told me something. And the manager actually called me into his office and he was saying, "You're actually really good at this," and kind of put me onto some game. And what he told me was that all these restaurants here in Manhattan and New York and Brooklyn and Jersey, and really all restaurants in general, but especially these, they change their menus frequently because of what they're trying to do is they're trying to introduce things that they're going to profit off. So introduce seasonal items and they get new stuff that's cheaper that they're trying to sell. So they're constantly needing new photos for social media, for their website and whatnot. And so what I started to do is I started to reach out to as many restaurants as I could and basically said, "Hey, my name is Bo. I take pictures. Here's some examples of my work. And if you guys need anything, I would be more than happy to help you. I charge competitive rates. Here's some of my work." And basically just started doing that. And I actually started to get quite a few jobs from that. And word travels fast when you do some decent work. There's a lot of bad photographers out there. So I started doing work for them. And a lot of the times they would call me back. The thing about these restaurants is they typically need new pictures at least every couple months because, again, the menu changes. There's seasonal items. Sometimes, a lot of the times those pictures will lead to some content for the restaurants, some talking head content for some restaurants before. So Over the course of the last 6 months, I started averaging about $4,000 or $5,000 a month just doing this as a side hustle. So I'm gonna give you guys basically a start to finish description of how to do this, and I'm gonna walk you guys through everything you're gonna need to know to actually start doing this for yourself, without skipping any details, so you don't have to worry about, oh, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna get a deck. Basically what a deck is it's an example of your work and some information about you that you're gonna send out. That's the professional way to do it, that the company is going to seem like, okay, this person actually has a deck, they're a professional. So we're going to make you a deck. And if you're concerned that you don't have a high quality camera, that's absolutely fine. As long as you have a decent iPhone, then this is going to work for you. The only investment you're going to have to make right now is a cheap light off Amazon. So first I'm going to show you the light that you're going to need. And then we're going to go into a course of basically a very, very fundamental breakdown of photography. And here's the thing about this type of photography. Everything is stationary. It takes out a lot of the guesswork. So I'm sitting here in my living room right now, and because everything is stationary, I'm not moving. All I have to do is set the lights a certain way, which is very easy to do, set my camera a certain way, and I don't have to do anything else. Food photography is even easier than this, and that's because of just like 4 or 5 settings. The light you're gonna wanna get is called the Yongnuo YN300. This is the light you get. If you have a higher budget, I'll link some other lights in the description that's good for like a higher budget, but this is the best entry-level light. It's battery powered. I've used this on tons of different shoots. I have a better light now, but this one is a beast for the price. It's like 70 bucks. I will note that you do have to get the adapter or batteries separate. They're not sold with the device, so I'll link those also. But that's the first step you're gonna do, is you need a decent light to get some decent photos. So first thing we're gonna do is go grab that light. That's pretty much all you're gonna need to get started. So we're gonna go through right now basically a very introductory course of how to take pictures and camera settings. So basically when you're using your iPhone or your Android or your smartphone to get pictures or videos, it has all these automatic settings it's adjusting in real time. So basically it's using all this intelligent information to adjust the aperture, the ISO, the temperature, all that stuff. And if you don't know what any of that is, that's fine, because we're about to go over that. But it's not truly capable of adjusting it as good as you could adjust it. So there are applications where you can actually access these features. So these features are not accessible on just the normal iPhone or Android camera. However, there are some free apps where we can access them and we can adjust them, and that's what's really going to make the difference of the quality of video. So there's really only 5 different settings we're going to worry about, and that's going to be the exposure, which is how lit or dark something is. So we want that close to 0, not too dark or not too blown out. We have the ISO, which is essentially fake white light. So like if you're shooting in a dark place, you can crank the ISO up, and that's going to give you like some basically fake light, make everything a little bit lighter. Then we have the aperture. So aperture is how wide your lens is open. The smaller the more wide open it is, that's called f-stop. So on like a good camera, it might be 1.7. On an iPhone, it might be a little bit higher. We'll get into that in a second. Then we have temperature. So a temperature or white balance, and that's telling the camera what is true white. And then we have shutter speed. So how fast is what you're moving or filming? How fast is that going? So exposure, and this is something we would adjust automatically ourselves. And this is how much light or how exposed the subject is. So as you can see on the first example, it'll give us and we want to get as close to 0 as possible on that. So we have 2.4, which is overexposed. The next one is negative 2.1, which is dark. And then the last one is 0. So it's like the perfect amount of exposure where we're picking up all the lights and it's not too dark. If it's too dark or too light, it's going to be hard or impossible to get a pro edit on it afterwards. So that's why we're looking out after that. So again, match this as close to 0 as possible. Next, we're going to talk about ISO. So ISO, like we just mentioned, is basically fake light for when you're filming a situation where you can't control the lights. So a little bit is fine. Too much can really give you grainy footage. So like here's an example of ISO at 100. And the level basically goes from like 0 to 5,000, 6,000, somewhere around there. And so the less you use, the better. Higher quality cameras have higher quality ISO. iPhones is pretty good. Androids is pretty good. But again, the more you use, the more noise will be introduced into your image. So when we have pro lights or we have like external lights, we don't really have to use any ISO because we're controlling the lights. So that's kind of what we're after when we're doing talking head content, which is what I'm doing now, basically just someone talking or like a still photo. So that's kind of what we're after in this situation. When we have lights, we want to use those and keep the ISO about under 200. Next, we're talking about aperture. So this is the f-stop. That's what this is known as. So higher quality cameras will have a lower f-stop, which is a wider aperture. So that's how wide the lens is opening. So like 1.4 would be like a high quality mirrorless camera. So mine's at like 3.5 right now, and it's a Sony ZV-E10. It's not a full frame. It's a pretty good camera. But anyway, the wider it is, the lower the f-stop, the more you're focusing on a subject and the more blurry the background is. So you're kind of creating that depth. So like right now, mine's is low as it can get because I want to focus on myself and blur out the background. Now, if I was shooting like a room full of people, I would want this higher. So I might want to go up to like a 8.0 or something like that. So basically, the easiest way to think about it is smaller number equals more open, bigger shot or closer shots. So talking head content. A bigger number is less open, wider shots, good for rooms or big spaces. So if you're getting a video of you DJing on a big, like on a stage from a distance, more closed, higher f-stop. And if you're doing like a picture, a portrait or something like that, a smaller number, more open, closer shots with more depth, basically. Then we have temperature or AWB, white balance. So what this is we're telling the camera or phone or whatever it is, what true white is. That way it can match it and it can give you a more accurate picture. So 550K is kind of like the industry standard of that's to us what sunlight is during the day. And so we try to match that with our lights. So both of my lights here are set at 550. And then I'm telling my camera, I'm going into the settings of my camera and telling it that 550 is what we're setting it to. So now they're all kind of in sync and they're matching that white balance. Shutter speed, so how fast is your object moving? So basically, most of the time I keep mine at 1/60. That's good for like, my hands are moving, but I'm sitting. It's not blurry. It's not going to introduce too much light or not enough light. So talking head content about 160 is good. If someone's running or something, you might want to move it up to 500. You don't really want to go under 60. So to kind of recap, talking head are still images. Auto white balance, we want it at 550. Exposure, we want it as close to 0 as possible. Shutter speed, 1/60. F low, so we want a lower number for a closer subject, higher for further. ISO, fake light, use as less as possible. So really that's 5 rules and you can get really good footage with them. So kind of revisiting the applications. So like I was saying, in your normal iPhone settings or Android settings, you won't have these options. You can get apps that are free or cheap where you can control these settings. So the first one is going to be Moment. That's a pretty well-known one. And it's $8.99. You pay once and you have it forever and you can adjust all these settings. DJI makes one that's free. It's pretty good. Again, you can adjust all these settings. And then they have Filmic Pro, which is a little bit more on the pricey side, but it's a lot more in-depth. I think DJI or Moment is fine for what we're trying to accomplish. Now moving on to lights, like I was saying, the lights is what really makes your video good. The one I'm using on this side is a Yongnuo YN300, and it's a firelight for the price. It's about $77. You do have to buy the batteries and the adapters separate. All the stuff in the description. But it's got a remote, it works to your phone. Literally this and a diffuser and a decent phone in your set. The one on my left is a little bit more expensive light, and that's the Godox SL60. It runs about $120. And it's a little bit bigger. It's less portable, but it's getting up to like industry quality, basically. And then with that, you just need a stand for the light and a diffuser. So the diffusers are shown here below, and then a stand, something to stand it on. And literally one of these apps, a light, diffuser, and a stand, and you're on your way to making some super high quality content, headshots, videos for your social media. So I hope that was some good information on basically what we're trying to do. And basically to summarize, we're gonna get our light, we're gonna get our camera, we're gonna shoot on portrait mode on our iPhone. We're gonna use one of these apps to match the temperature of our light. And we're just going to make sure the light's good, it's not overexposed, the exposure's right. We're gonna use one of these apps. So next we're gonna wanna touch up the photo a little bit. So this is an example that I'm guessing is already processed. I just grabbed it off the internet. This photo hasn't been processed much if it has been processed at all. So we're gonna go to adjust. And pretty much any picture or video I ever take, I crank the saturation just a little bit. And so remember, when we're processing pictures, and nothing's worse than an over-processed picture, so we want it just a little bit processed. Just like, we want to bring out its true colors instead of adding stuff. So notice if we crank the saturation all the way over here, it's too saturated now. We just want to bring out some of those natural like gold on top of it. So we're going to crank the saturation. Let's try like 20. That's a pretty good adjustment. A little bit of vignette can really help a lot. Again, very subtle, so just a little bit of white on the outside. And so this autofocus deal on Canva will actually give you that f-stop kind of look we're looking for. So let's say we want to kind of do like a little blurry thing here. We'll increase the blur intensity and make sure the focal point's like right in the middle. Kind of blur out the plate a little bit there. So really, I mean, the saturation cranked a little bit is key. When we have good lightings and we have like a decent camera, there's not really a whole lot we have to do. So again, I would just increase the saturation a little bit and maybe do some kind of blurring effects. And again, Canva's free and it's super easy to use. So that's how I would edit. Now let's talk about actually getting your customers. So this is gonna be where the hardest part of this job comes in, and that's gonna be reaching out and finding leads. So there's a number of ways to do them. You can reach out on social media, but it can be kind of tricky finding specific restaurants, and a lot of times they're not monitored. The best way to get in touch with them is via email, because the email is usually monitored by someone who's in charge. Sometimes social media is ran by a company that has nothing to do with them, or someone who's not involved in like the administration part of the restaurant. One way to do it is to go through Google and try to find the email addresses, but I did this myself and it's a huge pain. It took me literally probably 10 hours because a lot of them don't list their email address as public. So I had to crawl the website, find the email address, and submit it that way. If you want to skip this step, I literally just finished a list of about 130 of the newer restaurants in the area. This is going to save you probably 10 hours of work from like digging and finding them. If you're interested in that list, it's linked down below for 20 bucks, but you can go in and do it manually if you want. The way I would do it is search for restaurants near me, click on the link, go to the website. And see, here's the problem right here is a lot of them do not show their website manually. So I actually had a tool that crawls the website, finds a linked email address associated with them, and saves it that way. So I would recommend grabbing that list. It will save you a lot of time if you have the means. It's 20 bucks. If not, just go through and grab them one at a time. Once you do that, you're really just going to reach out with your deck and just be really polite, obviously. Hey, keep it very brief. They're getting tons of emails from different people. Hey, my name's so-and-so. I'm a food photographer. I have competitive rates. If there's any way I can help you guys in the future, please let me know. If you don't hear from a lot of them, don't get discouraged. I would, however, make sure to follow back with them. So even though you've reached out to one once and you haven't heard, reach back in a month or two, because like I said, this all depends on getting them at the right time. If you can send them an email and they're like, hey, we actually were about to update our menu or some of our items in a week or two, then you'll get that job and odds are they will keep you. You would think a lot of them would have photographers that work with regularly, but I've found that not really to be true. So it's a very good opportunity for you to lock in the customer and maintain them for a long time. Personally, for me, I actually am starting to make money in my own industry now of music production. So I really wanted to pass this on to other New Yorkers who were struggling to make ends meet. Another thing I'll mention is once you get that job, you did your deck pictures with your iPhone, right? Once you did that job, go to Best Buy and either buy or get a Best Buy card to make payments on the ZVE camera on your way to the shoot. Like literally, so that way you're not buying anything until you actually have a job, right? So you can show them the iPhone pictures, which will look super professional, but obviously nobody wants someone showing up to, a photo shoot with an iPhone. So once you get that job, it's going to be at least a couple $100. Go to Best Buy. These are about $600 or $700 and get a Sony ZV-E10. I'll link them in the description. You can buy them off Amazon. You can make payments from Best Buy. And then from there, you're off to the races. Just follow up with them, maintain that relationship, ask for referrals. It's going to take some hustle. It's not going to be super easy, but you can provide a comfortable income for yourself by doing this. So I really hope this helps someone. I really hope that someone's able to find an income and support themselves off this. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.